Have you ever wondered why some people are super confident and always happy with the world around them, while some people are constantly complaining about everything? I've been fascinated by this. What makes us who we are? Why are our brains wired to think in a certain way? And why do we behave in a certain way? Is it genetic? Is it our conditioning? This is what Rewiring is all about. We're going to try and look for answers. We'll be speaking to counselors, psychologists, psychiatrists, doctors, professionals from the field of neuroscience, neuroplasticity, neurogenetics, and not just that. We're going to attempt to put this in our cultural context. Today, I have psychologist Dr. Vandita Dubey with me to take us through the psychology behind patterns of our behavior, thoughts, and belief that we carry with us. How positive or negative are these patterns in our life, and when does it become critical to fix them? Tell us a little bit about what these belief patterns are and when are they formed?
So these belief patterns are really strongly held, deeply held thoughts or beliefs about our own selves, about other people, relationships, and about the world at large. And these belief patterns really reside more in an unconscious mind. They're not something that we kind of keep talking about morning, noon, and night. It's not, that we keep walking around saying I'm this and I'm that. But it's more of the basic, the fundamental stuff which guides our behavior. So our belief patterns are what lead us to behave in certain ways and feel in certain ways, react to different situations in certain ways. And these belief patterns are formed in childhood, and these are formed based on our temperament and our personality, but also based on our experiences of growing up, in our families of origin, in the experiences that we have with people outside school, other significant adults, people's experiences, traumatic experiences that we have. So all those things shape us and they form us, and they really guide the formation of these belief patterns.
I think everybody watching this would be interested in knowing what kind of beliefs are we talking about?
Okay, so the kind of beliefs that we're talking about are really, very both positive and negative kind of mind chatter, you could call them, or what comes out as mind chatter, but positive and negative beliefs about how, whether you're worthy or you're not, whether you're capable of being loved, or are you capable of loving others or not? Is the world a scary place, or is the world largely a safe place? Do you feel entitled that everything should work my way all the time, or are you other-oriented? Are you self-oriented? Mm-hmm. Things like that. So there are lots of different beliefs around that, both positive and negative.
So the next time you actually catch yourself or catch an inner chatter, which is negative, which tells you, hey, you can't do this because, and reminds you of something that happens, this is the belief pattern that we are talking about, right?
Yeah, definitely. But a lot of times these beliefs are hidden. So they're not available to us right off. So what typically happens is that you will react with a strong emotion. Yeah. It's like, you wanted to do something, it didn't happen, and you're upset. And the upset could last for somebody for a few minutes, for somebody for a few hours, and for somebody a few weeks, perhaps even months. And, why is it that somebody can let go of that upset in a few minutes versus why does somebody hold on to that upset for a few months is really based on what the beliefs that they hold deeply inside about themselves.
So give us an example, Doc.
It could be that you're at work and something happened. Maybe your boss came along and said, you didn't send me an email on time, or, whatever, some negative sounding feedback, right? And you really go into a very extreme emotional reaction to it. You either feel very upset, very upset with yourself, upset with your boss, upset at the situation, upset at somebody. But there is this extreme reaction to what seems like a relatively minor kind of a problem.
Overreaction.
An overreaction, yeah. And now the thing is that, okay, once in a while you have an overreaction, it's okay, right? But it's just that when that overreaction becomes very frequent, that it's happening in the workplace, when somebody gives you a slightly negative feedback. It happens at home or in relationship with a spouse. You're fighting about things. He says something, she says something, you really get upset. And with your child, with your parents, with friends, whatever. So when it becomes that that behavior or that emotional reaction is becoming very frequent, is when you have to stop and think and say, what's going on?
What could be some of these negative patterns? And I'd like to stress here, there are positive and negative patterns. We're really getting into the negative patterns so that we can try and rewire them.
There are different beliefs that we hold about ourselves, right? There are beliefs related to how capable we are. So somebody might have a belief saying, I'm really not very capable. I really can't do things very well. I'm a failure. Those are ability-related beliefs. Then there are beliefs about, can I be loved? Am I lovable? Will people accept me? If they get to know the real me, will they reject me? Then there are, of course, beliefs. Some people have beliefs around, which are more grandiose or more entitlement oriented. So things like, everybody should always obey what I say. Everybody should do what I want them to do, and of course thoughts like that. Those are, I have to say, fewer. By and large, the more troubling negative thoughts are around your self, related to your self-esteem, your abilities, your confidence, about how you think about self-worth, what do you think about yourself, and so all of these negative kind of statements that one holds about oneself.
And Doc, as you mentioned earlier on, most of the time, when something happens, when you have an overreaction to something, you usually aren't aware of the fact that these are some of the thought patterns that have come up, right? So how could some of these beliefs, like you're talking about lack of self-confidence, for instance, what could it lead to a person feeling?
So a lack of self-confidence, so basically it's saying, I'm just not capable, I just can't do things. There are different ways in which it plays out for people. There are times that somebody who holds a belief like this will, just avoid doing things, because if I feel I can't do things, then I don't want to take on things, because I'm going to feel miserable when I'm not able to do them. So I'll just avoid. So whether it's taking exams or, looking for that promotion or, any new responsibility, I'll just stay away from them. So one way is it comes out as avoidance. Another is that, okay, anything happens, anything slightly negative happens, any negative feedback comes your way, something that you fail at, even in a small way, you just go back to yourself, you beat yourself up and say, well, that's because I can't do things. I'm just not good enough. I've never been able to do anything, I'll never be able to do anything. So there is this negative prediction that you also have about yourself and about your future. So it's about the past, present and future. So you're looking at everything in a negative way, right? And then sometimes people even try to overcompensate. So you will, go in and put in like 80 hours at work and, take on like 10 things at the same time and be this super employee, super person, super parent, whatever it is, right? And obviously, nobody can be that. And so it'll start falling apart at some point. And the thing is, when it does fall apart, then you beat yourself up, say, oh, well, it had to happen because I'm not good enough. I can't do things. I'm not capable enough. I'm never able to do stuff. So it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy that happens at that point.
We've talked about avoidance. We've talked about overcompensating. What about numbing?
So numbing is also a way of avoiding emotional pain, right? So obviously, if you are someone who has a very strongly held belief that you're not worth it, you can't do things properly, nothing works out for you, you're just not capable, you're not good enough, and that comes out again and again at work, at home, relationships, wherever, right? Obviously, then you'll be somebody who's feeling miserable a lot of the time. It doesn't make you feel good to feel that you're pretty worthless, right? So how do you cope with that emotional pain then? One way to cope with that emotional pain is using substances or shopping, internet, any kind of an addiction can fill in that. Another way in which all these substances and different kinds of addictions fill up a person is when they feel that emotionally, their needs will not be met. So that is another kind of a belief that a person can have, that no matter what relationship I'm in, my emotional needs can never be met. And then there is such a profound sense of emptiness that they carry around with them, that the only way to kind of fill it up is through these kinds of addictive behaviors.
So we will be getting into how our personal self-belief actually affects everything else, including our relationships. And when two people come together with different patterns of belief and thought and behavior, and that's when problems happen. And we'll be getting into that, in another episode. But right now, let's get back to how does one become aware that there is that internal negative chatter that we need to stop? Because as you said, it's more subconscious than conscious, right?
Yeah. So, the clue or the thing that you can really catch is your emotions. Everybody knows how they feel. Everybody's able to express. You know when you're feeling upset. So, one way to do it is, even in a very structured way, you could start noting down all those incidents where you felt really upset. Really, really sad, really, really angry, really, really worried, disappointed, jealous, whatever it was, right? So a strong feeling, a strong emotion. And so note down what that strong emotion was, and then the accompanying event, what triggered it. Of course, a lot of times when we look at an event and we talk about it, it's like, oh, I felt this because he didn't do that, or he said that, or she said that, or this didn't happen or that didn't happen. But that's pointing outwards. That's not where the answer lies. What one has to do is to say, okay, fine, they may have said this or not said this, whatever, but what did it make you feel about yourself at that point in time? What were the thoughts that were running through your mind at that point in time when this happened? So you have to play a little bit of a detective. But when you start looking at the patterns, looking at all the times when this has happened, you'll start figuring out what those basic thoughts are that keep getting triggered each time, right? So somebody gets a negative feedback, you sift through the different thoughts saying, oh, he said this, but she didn't. But then you come back to it saying, but what really made me feel horrible was that I felt that, this happens to me all the time. I just can't do it. I'm just not good enough, right? So you have to kind of peel off the layers and get to the basic thoughts that are there.
And at Rebrain, we actually believe that you can rewire your thoughts, emotions, and you can do this consciously, really, by writing your emotions down, like Dr. Dubey said. But what could be some other methods? What if you're just not able to pinpoint what it is that is bothering you? What happens then?
It's a process of sifting.
Yeah.
So actually, writing does help a lot, or you can talk it through with somebody who you think you can talk with. I mean, not somebody who will just not listen or, have their own opinions and have their own ideas thrust on you, but somebody who will actually really listen. You can talk it through with them. Even things like, meditation help, because it lets you just sit with your emotions or thoughts at a certain point in time. So over time, people get good at being able to catch thoughts like that. But there's another exercise actually that you can do, which is a very structured way of writing things down. You can say, this is happening, whatever is happening, and whatever is happening, what I need to do at this point is. It's like a sentence completion. What I need to do at this point is, and generate a list of options, right? Once you go through the options, then you say, okay, in order to do X, I need to do. So keep generating a list of options till you kind of get to the bottom of what you really need to do. Similarly with what's going on, sometimes you can just write down. Okay, just write down whatever is running through your head, and then read it later. Sometimes you can give it a break and read it later and look at all of that. You'll be able to see where your mind was, where was it churning, and you might be able to pick out one or two things and then work on them.
And also very important, every time you're faced with a dilemma like this, I think it's important for you to introspect, why did I react to this? Because it reminded me of something in the past. Then you are able to draw that connection. But I'm coming to a very important part, and I think that is what a majority of us do, and that is ignore it. Literally, like, distract yourself for the time being till you get over that emotion, because it's not comfortable at all. As a psychologist, what do you say to people who distract themselves?
Taking a break works. I don't know if distraction really works, because these are two separate things, different things. Of course, when you're feeling really overwhelmed with an emotion, it is a good idea to take a break for the moment, do something else till the emotion subsides. If it's anger or it's sadness or it's upset, whatever, and especially in a relationship, because of course once you've expressed it, then there'll be a reaction and it becomes something else. But the thing is that you need to take a break with the decision that you're going to come back to it and you're going to face what it was that triggered that emotional reaction in you. If you're just going to keep avoiding all the time, looking at what triggered that reaction, you'll never get to the bottom of it, and things will always keep triggering strong emotional reactions. So break is good, because the interesting thing about emotions is that they're all quite short-lived actually. We think that if we're angry, we'll be angry for like days on end, or if we're sad, it'll never end, the sadness will never end. But even the deepest of grief comes in short bursts. You will pass through that emotional reaction, and then you can with a different frame of mind look at the situation and say, okay, what happened there?
But I think we are all aware of at least one or two people in our lives, at least, who don't like confronting emotions, who will distract themselves completely.
You can kind of distract yourself through an emotion, right? You have a heated argument with somebody, you feel really angry, you go out and do something else because you don't want to think about that, which is fine. Maybe if it's a one-off situation that's happened, perhaps it may work. But now you've had that argument in the evening with a friend, and tomorrow you go to work and you meet a boss or a colleague who says something, and you again triggers a strong emotional reaction. Now you can't keep running away all the time. You can't just bury yourself in Netflix all the time. You have to emerge and you have to face why it's happening, why is it that you're feeling what you're feeling.
What happens if you don't?
Then it's a pattern. It'll keep repeating itself. That's what happens.
Yeah. And that's really the crux of it all. You've got to resolve it. And I can speak about myself. Every time I was faced, and I am faced with, confronting a lot of emotions, I would run to work. I mean, even with dealing with grief, I would run to work because it was easier. And when it came all at once. And I was really overwhelmed with it. And so to avoid that overwhelming experience, and I think that is what leads to anxiety and depression, because you keep suppressing it. You don't want to confront it. So talk us through a little bit about what happens when you aren't able to confront it.
Well, if you don't confront them, don't work through them, then they're not going to go away on their own. They're not going to change magically overnight. Nothing's going to happen. Things are still going to remain the same. You still have to live with you. And if you think a certain way, then that is, what's going to be with you, right? Yeah. And what happens over time is with these kinds of negative thoughts, this negative pattern of thinking, that it pulls you down in ways that ultimately get you to a point where you actually have a diagnosable disorder like depression or anxiety, because those thoughts have actually grown and taken such a hold of your life and are affecting so many spheres of your life that you're feeling miserable, but you're not addressing the root cause, and you're going on feeling miserable, and of course then after a point you can't even manage, you can't even deal with it on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, let's get back to some of the other beliefs of the self. Talk us through neediness.
Yeah, so emotional neediness is a behavior. Neediness is really a behavior, but it can come from. It's possible that it comes from a belief that one holds about oneself regarding relationships and about other people. So the belief that often triggers neediness is the belief that people will leave me. That people who I really love will leave me. I will be abandoned. I will be rejected. And with that kind of a feeling inside, people will again cope in different ways with that thought and with that feeling. And one way is to hold on to people when you do have a relationship, when you are in a relationship. That's where the clinginess and neediness is seen, right? You're trying to just hold on so that this doesn't come true because you fear that this will happen. And that's how it is. There are other ways also that people cope with this particular thought, this particular belief. And another way of coping with this belief is by avoiding relationships completely or becoming very controlling.
And grandiosity and entitlement you were talking about. What do you mean by that?
So it's more a sense of or a belief that a person has internally, which is which comes from a point of saying, everything should work out my way, all the time. People should do what I want them to do, So it's kind of a very self-centered belief, but it can be formed from an experience of, never having been said no to for things ever as a child. So you grow up feeling that, you're really special and the world revolves around you. And then that gets expressed in many different ways in life. I mean, at work, it could be somebody who goes into this ballistic rage when things don't go their way, when people don't follow through on what they've said they would, and so on.
So what could be some of the other beliefs?
Some of the other beliefs are, that I'm vulnerable, that the world is a scary place, and people are out to get me. The beliefs around trust, that people can't be trusted because they will hurt me. The beliefs around being damaged, or being ashamed of yourself, feeling that in some ways you're flawed, you're fundamentally flawed, and a related belief to that is if people find out that I'm flawed, then they will leave me. So trying to hide what you think are your flaws, perceived flaws, they may not be real, but just trying to hide. Another belief is this belief that you do not have to exert self-control, coming from a point of saying, I can just go ahead and do whatever I want, at the time that I want. So being very impulsive, if I want to go shop, I should just be able to go and do it right now. If I want to say something to somebody, I should be able to do it right now. And not being able to exercise any control over yourself and feeling that you don't even need to. That's not a requirement, that you don't have to, and that you're this person who's just going to not have any self-control.
We're reiterating here that these are beliefs and they are not necessarily true. They are errors in thought if they are negative.
Yeah.
And there are positive beliefs as well. And we are, continuously going to reiterate that errors in thinking, if there are errors in thinking, it will lead you to erroneous patterns.
Right.
It's very interesting because what can parents do to ensure an environment where children can thrive? Because if parents are watching this, I think every parent's wish is that they have children who grow up with a certain self-awareness about themselves also, and self-esteem and self-confidence. So how can parents ensure that?
Well, I think most parents do that. And so safety, security are one of the biggest things, and consistency, right? So being a parent who communicates openly with the child, who's there to listen to the child, to hear what they say, to actually spend time with them. So you're actually spending quality time with the child. You're taking care of the child, helping them when they go through, of course, difficult times, maybe at school, maybe with friends, whatever it is. So lots of hugs and kisses, of course. Touch is very important. So generally, kids who grow up in a more positive environment where they get enough attention and care and love and touch in a good way, that is that's a positive environment to grow up in. But along with that, there have to be healthy limits. So it's not that anything goes, you can do anything, because then you might end up on the side of having a child who grows up feeling very entitled. So it's not giving in. So it doesn't mean giving in to all the whims and fancies of the child. It also means saying no at times to the child and saying, no, this, you can't do this, or these are the limits, or this is what you should do. So in some ways, creating that structure, holding on to those limits, but at the same time in a more loving and supportive way.
I really want to bring up this whole issue of not hearing but listening, and parents acknowledging what children have to say, so that the children are aware that they are being acknowledged, that their conversation is being heard, right? Very many parents don't do that. And how important is that in the child really feeling secure about themselves, really?
So, it's a very basic thing. If a child feels heard, then they feel that, okay, they have a voice, they are important enough, or they're worthy enough to get their parents' attention, and hence then, other people's attention, so they can hold that attention, that they can listening is very, very active. Listening is very, very important, where you're actually hearing the child out. You may not agree with it all the time, or you may have to correct some stuff that the child is saying, which you think is incorrect, or whatever it is. But it has to be a conversation, a real conversation, not a one-way thing of, do this, do that, and you have to follow what I'm telling you, and that's it. Not that kind of a instruction thing. The home is not the only environment in which the child exists. The child is also interacting with friends, interacting with people in the school, with neighbors, with generally the world at large. You travel out, you go, you watch the news, you're exposed to magazines, books, internet, movies, Netflix, whatever, right? Cartoons. And all of those bring in messages. And the child needs to make sense of all of that. So one of the important things also is teaching the child critical thinking, which is that, when you get certain information, doesn't mean that it's always true or it's factual, that you need to look through it. When friends say something, it doesn't always mean that that's the truth. And, helping child build up their own skills of being able to sift through various kinds of information. Because things like this will happen. Kids will come back from school with negative experiences at school of getting bullied, of other children making fun of them, or of various kinds of things, right? And for the child to make sense of all of that and not let it affect him, because that can also lead to forming these negative beliefs. So, one of the things is that it's not just the home environment or the relationship with the parents and the child's experience of the relationship of the parents, which leads to the beliefs that they are formed. They can also be formed through other experiences, and especially negative experiences. And these could be outside the home. It could be at school. It could be severe bullying at school, which makes a child feel vulnerable and feel that the place is unsafe, the world is an unsafe place, that you can't trust people, and so on. So, and you can't be there all the time as a parent. So it's helping the child sift through all of that, to manage all that, and to build a very stable and positive sense of their own self and belief about themselves.
You'll be able to find more discussions on topics related to the concept of patterns, thinking patterns, behavior patterns, coping patterns, relationship patterns on our YouTube channel, Rebrain TV.